What does it mean to refactor your brain, and how can this concept help AEC professionals increase their effectiveness at work?
So refactoring the brain is basically reprogramming what's not working. And, from AEC perspective, it would kind of look like finding the design flaws in your system.
What is brain refactoring, and how can it help AEC professionals become better leaders? In this episode, I have with me engineer and author of the book Brain Refactor, Dagna Bieda. And Dagna is going to talk about how we can refactor or reframe our thinking patterns or our mindset to help us as technical professionals become better managers and better leaders. All right, now I would like to welcome our guest onto the show for today. Dagna Bieda is a coach and author and a speaker. Her book is Brain Refactor, and I'm excited to talk with her today. Dagna, welcome to the AEC Leadership Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Anthony. I'm super stoked to be here.
So, Dagna, let's start off by maybe you can tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and kind of what led you to focus on kind of helping engineers refactor their thinking to improve productivity, something I think every engineer wants to improve.
Yeah, I've been that particular person who needed that kind of help and didn't get it for a long time. And I had to figure it all by myself. So I figured if I have figured it out now, let's go ahead and share it with other people. Because one thing that I really realized that opened my eyes after spending over a decade in tech is that the biggest challenges that engineers face are typically not really technical. Many of them stem from how we think. And in my case, having a robotics and software engineering background, I could see the way we operate and how our human brains work kind of as a system, like a robot or an app, or a computer software. So I ended up putting all that knowledge into my upcoming book, Brain Refactor, and I'm excited to dive a little bit deeper.
That's awesome. That's interesting. So let's dive into it here. So what does it mean to refactor your brain, and how can this concept help AEC professionals increase their effectiveness at work?
So refactoring the brain is basically reprogramming what's not working. And, from AEC perspective, it would kind of look like finding the design flaws in your system. Right? You're taking a step back. You're taking this holistic perspective, looking at the outcomes that are currently happening, thinking of yourself, of your brain, of how you work as a product, separate from the essence of who you are, of who you potentially could become, more of a product of your lived experience throughout your life. And whenever you want to refactor your brain, you're diving into the product design and you're trying to figure out, okay, what's not working and why is it not working? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, listen, as AEC professionals, we're constantly working on designing projects, and, we go through different process groups on those projects, like initiating a project, executing, monitoring and controlling, closing the project. And we're always looking to make the project lifecycle better, right? Like what's not working. So I think trying to apply that to yourself in terms of personal development, your skill sets is a great approach, and probably something that a lot of AEC professionals would be comfortable with because they're comfortable with doing it on their projects. They would just have to learn to kind of apply it to themselves, essentially, which I think is something that can
like
be powerful.
The whole concept is use the skills you already have and you apply to work, to the products that you currently create, design, and just use the skills that you already have, but to yourself. So I love how you put it right there, Anthony.
Right. The product or the project is essentially you in this case. Basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in your book, Brain Refactor, you discuss some common obstacles like imposter syndrome, burnout. How do these issues impact productivity for AEC professionals?
When it comes to imposter syndrome, a lot of the time it leads to hesitating, to not stepping up into opportunities, right? And that leads to inefficiency. When it comes to burnout, it drains your productivity. It drains your energy. It's hard to make decisions when you don't have the energy or mental clarity in order to do so. And whenever you're able to jump into the design and spot the flaws that are causing the imposter syndrome, that are causing the burnout, and basically change the implementation plan, make sure that those flaws are no longer there, you are able to get past those obstacles. Is it okay if I read a little bit, a small paragraph
Sure.
out
Yeah,
of the book
absolutely.
related to the topic? Okay. So in terms of imposter syndrome, in my book, I describe imaginary engineer, Linda, who gets promoted, and she goes from individual contributor to being in a tech lead position. She leads a team of a few engineers, and they deliver a major feature. And unfortunately, that feature causes an outage and loss of revenue for the company, which makes her confidence crumble. And what I analyze in that part of the book is how her internal design, or how I call it internal mental programming, either kicks off the imposter syndrome routine or helps her just lean into those growing pains of stepping into a new position, a leadership position. And there are, even though the situation is the same and the person is the same, how she analyzes the two is completely different. And I'll read about it in just a second. And her interpretation of what happened and the internal dialogue that it causes leads to completely different career outcomes. Okay, let me dive in. So, Linda blames herself and starts questioning whether she was rightfully promoted and whether she deserved it. Negative thoughts swirl through her head, weighing her down more than they usually would. It's a result of working all these extra hours to catch up on new skills and not having enough time to regenerate. She's been working real hard just to catch up with all the new skills she needs to master for the new role and new set of challenges being in the leadership position. What happens next all depends on the internal mental programming that assigns meaning to what's going on around her. If Linda's legacy mental code is running the imposter syndrome routines, she might think, I knew I wasn't cut out for this role. I've just been fooling everyone and now it's blown up right in my face. Everyone probably thinks I'm incompetent now. I can't believe I let this happen. I should not have been promoted. I'm not capable of handling this level of responsibility. I'm not skilled enough for this job. It's clear that I don't belong here. However, if she gets that design flaw out of her mind, and if her mental code allows her to lean into the growing pains, she probably thinks something like this. Okay, that was a major setback. But hey, it's all part of the learning process. I just need to figure out what went wrong and how to prevent it in the future. And even though this failure is tough to swallow, I know it doesn't define me, my abilities, or my worth. I gotta be real. I am new to this role, and I haven't found my footing yet. I'm facing new challenges, the kind I haven't faced before, and, well, failures are just inevitable. But I've overcome challenges before. I'm capable of learning from the mistakes and improving. So I'm going to stay focused, stay positive, seek feedback, and keep moving forward. Again, the event didn't change. It's all about how she processed what was happening around her, leading to two completely different career outcomes. In the first one, she's probably going to take a step back from that leadership position, look for a demotion. In the second one, she's actually going to be able to grow from that difficult experience.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. And I should have said this earlier, but if you're not familiar with imposter syndrome, it's essentially like doubting your own skills and your abilities. And in this case, of course, the example that Dagna shared with us, Linda was kind of doubting herself going into the position from the beginning, which means she had that mindset of that first example where she just didn't believe in herself. So anything that happens, she's going to revert back to that mindset. But if she would have been able to kind of reframe, right, refactor that, I guess you could say, from the beginning, so that she believed in herself, she would have just seen some of those bumps in the road just as that. Like, hey, it's a bump. I'm going to get over it. I'm going to push through it. It's my first time. So it's really like your mindset affects your ability to process what happens to you, right? So that you can make either one of two decisions. Like Dagna said, you could either say, hey, it's a learning experience, keep moving forward, or hey, I'm not good enough, I can't do this anymore type of thing, which obviously in the realm of someone's career could be kind of a life-changing thing. So that being said, Dagna, how can AEC professionals refactor their thinking to overcome this challenge and really kind of boost their productivity and really their overall success?
So the question is, what's working and what's not working, right? How do you know that your system is working or not working? Usually through feedback. An end user will let you know, hey, this thing is not doing what it's supposed to do. In the case of an app, for example, let's say the end user is pressing a button and they're expecting for a new pop-up window and it doesn't happen. There's just this loading little circle and that's it, and it freezes. That's the kind of behavior, the kind of outcome that hints at essentially the system not working correctly. That feedback carries that information that the things are not working. And then you have to, again, go back to the drawing board, understand how this system came to be, how it was designed, and how you could figure out what kind of design flaw has led to this particular outcome. And you go back to redesigning the system.
Interesting. So basically, someone using an app would get feedback from the users, and you as a professional would need to get feedback from team members or a supervisor or a client or any kind of feedback that you can get about yourself or your actions to help you to be able to refactor. Is that correct?
Exactly. Right. So that feedback comes in. Now, another thing is we're not always open to receiving feedback, right? So we have to be open to receive that feedback that things aren't working, and then also work towards having more awareness and mindfulness in our day-to-day, in our daily jobs. So for example, if you notice yourself being stuck in a cycle of procrastination, stress, or self-doubt, that's a sign that something's not working, right? Why are all these feelings coming up? Those emotions, they are a signal. Your body trying to let your mind know, hey, this isn't working for us, right? We're stressing so much. Something's happening here. And journaling can be a phenomenal tool to dive deeper. Working with a coach, working with a therapist, these are also phenomenal tools that will help you understand which patterns are beneficial, which ones are holding you back and are kind of like those design flaws that we've been referring to. And once you have the awareness of what's not working, that's when you can start refactoring your internal code.
That's great. And so, I think those are some good recommendations, of course, like working with a coach and other things. But before you even get to that point, how can AEC professionals kind of identify some of these unproductive mental patterns or bugs, if you will, that might be holding them back? Like the example you gave with Linda, like how can we initially say, hey, we've got to get some help here. This isn't the right way we should be thinking about things.
It's recognizing that things aren't working, right? And feedback, we usually think about it as words directed towards us, like in a one-on-one, or like if a peer gives you feedback on your design. But a lot of the time, feedback is also in what's happening around us. So like not getting a promotion is feedback. Trying to land an interview and not landing in interviews, that's feedback. Some things are not working. So whatever outcomes we're expecting to have in our life, and we keep not getting those outcomes that we keep working towards, that means things aren't working. That's feedback.
Yeah, that's great. So how does dealing with difficult interpersonal challenges in the workplace, how does that contribute to reduced productivity, and how can we make some shifts to help resolve that? Because that's what we deal with a lot in engineering, is a lot of interpersonal issues and challenges. We work on teams with a lot of people.
Absolutely. Difficult relationships a lot of the time can lead to stress and miscommunication. And then how can you be efficient whenever you cannot communicate with the person you're working with, right? That directly affects your productivity. So this is a feedback right? If we're coming into a situation working with a team of engineers and the team morale is really down, that's feedback. There's something that's not working. We can see it as an obstacle, annoyance, or an opportunity for growth. Because if there's something not working, perhaps someone needs to invest in their communication skills. Maybe there needs to be better boundaries put into place. So these challenges, if you look at them from a design perspective, from a product perspective, separating yourself from the product, as we were talking about it, you could approach them with curiosity rather than frustration. And thanks to that curiosity, you'd be able to solve those kind of challenges much faster. It really depends on the on the nature of those problems and challenges. But we are going back to being aware, understanding that whatever's happening is just feedback. And the question is, what kind of information this feedback carries and how can I use it in order to improve my system?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's really what one of the challenges is here, is that we need the feedback to be able to make improvements, but we're not always comfortable getting the feedback. So we've kind of got, right? We've got to be willing to, if you want to become a strong leader, I guess, and not just in this industry, but just in life in general, you need to be comfortable with knowing that you're going to have to get feedback from people, and it's not always going to be positive feedback. That's the key. And if it's not positive, that the good there is that means it's something you can improve, which comes into exactly what we're talking about.
I love that you pointed it out, that it's not always positive, but the reality is it's in our minds how we interpret it, right? If it's positive or negative, if it hurts our feelings or if it doesn't, you could see it just as information. It doesn't have to hurt.
Right. Like how you process. Again, it goes back to how you're processing it, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked a lot here about kind of refactoring your brain. We talked about, you read a great example for us from your book. So I just want to kind of leave our listeners today with some really practical strategies, maybe from your book, on how AEC professionals can really refactor their thinking to overcome obstacles and become better problem solvers. Because that's really, in AEC world, what we're doing every day is we're solving problems for our clients. We're solving problems for our organizations. And based on your book, it sounds like there are some pretty practical things that people can do to start getting better there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I talk a lot about refactoring. You called it reframing, Anthony, and it's basically a similar thing. Reframing problems, looking at challenges from different perspectives that help us unlock new solutions. But another thing I would like to recommend, which I talk about in the book, is seeing your well-being as your investment strategy for your career and growth and problem solving. Because at the end of the day, as engineers, we are solving problems, like you said. And solving problems requires a lot of brain power. So if you think about your brain as your tool, that is the one that helps you really solve all the problems, get your work done, like how often do you actually perform maintenance? How often, like you take your car to a mechanic, right? You change the oil, tires, right, add the windshield fluid and liquid, and you take care of your car. But with our brains, we don't really put that much thought into it. But another strategy for enhancing problem-solving skills is making sure that you actually maintain your brain, that you put good fuel into it, that every now and then you let yourself rest, recharge, relax, rejuvenate, because you need that mental energy in order to solve all the problems. In the book, I also refer to regular mental debugging of your internal code sitting in between your ears. That will help you remove the outdated beliefs that no longer serve you. And when I talk about debugging them and removing them, again, I'm referring to redesigning your system and getting rid of those design flaws.
That's awesome. I think that this is very beneficial for AEC professionals because we're always dealing with problems, number one. I mean, that's basically what you're hired to solve is problems. But you're also always having to overcome your own internal obstacles when you're trying to grow as a project manager, as a leader in the AEC industry. And I think Dagna, a lot of what you talk about in your book and in your philosophy reminds me of the quote that I like a lot, which is, life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you respond to it, right? It's just about things are going to happen to you every day in your career, and the way you respond to them, which is a lot of times driven by your mindset, is going to dictate how successful you are. And what I like about Dagna's philosophy is that there are going to be times that you're not going to respond great, but if you can identify them, right, and then kind of refactor your thinking to respond better the next time, then that's how you're going to become successful. And I think probably the most challenging part is being aware of that so that you can get better next time. And I think Dagna's point of trying to get the feedback, right, from your managers, from your team members, from your clients, from the project success, those are all kind of feedback points for you to be able to be successful. So does that kind of sum it up well, Dagna?
I love how you summarized it. It just nails it. Yes.
Okay, great. So once again, the book is Brain Refactor: Optimize Your Internal Code to Thrive in Tech and Engineering and Get More Success, Fulfillment, Money, Opportunities, Impact, and Growth. Her name is Dagna Bieda. She's been a wonderful guest. And Dagna, I want to thank you so much once again for spending some time with us here on the AEC Leadership Podcast. I would imagine our listeners can connect with you on LinkedIn. I know you have a website. If there's anything else you want to share, please.
Yes, absolutely. So I've been super excited to be here, and I'm very excited for my book's launch as well. It's coming out on Kindle, and the paperback is already available on Amazon. All you have to do is just type in Brain Refactor, and you should be able to find it. It's a pretty weird connection of two words that don't typically go together. So it's very easy to find on Amazon. Brain Refactor. Then I hope that if you do pick up the book, that you will let me know how you liked it or what resonated with you most through LinkedIn. Because yes, I'm on LinkedIn. I love connecting with people, and I share a lot of my strategies and tips from the book there on a daily basis as well.
Awesome. Once again, Dagna, thank you so much for spending some time with us here on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
I hope you really enjoyed my conversation with Dagna. Like I said in the conversation with her, it really comes down to that quote. Life is really 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you respond. And if you can refactor or reframe your thinking patterns to respond more effectively, you're going to see better results. If you liked it, please consider subscribing to our channel here. We put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help engineers become better managers and leaders. I'll see you next week.